All right, I'm going to ask you guys a question, and maybe you're asking yourself a question. We put it that way. Should you go to a trade school to learn auto body and or painting a car? And the thing I'm going to tell you is a lot of universities, colleges, trade schools, and all these things, and I'm not going to name names, but there's a few that really irritate the hell out of me. Try and talk you into going to school, to their school, and how that's going to get you a job and everything else. And I'm going to tell you, not everybody ends up being really good at this. When I was in community college, there was just certain people that when I was doing like TA type of stuff there was just certain people that just didn't have the hand-eye coordination. And if they invested in a trade school, they'd probably be done with the trade school and have no job and have no experience and have a nice big fat student loan. The thing I'll tell you guys is that these colleges don't really care if you get a job. They just want to sell tuition. So you really want to be careful before you invest in it, because you're basically making an investment. And it's sort of like investing in oil stock and finding out after that cars are mandated worldwide to be electric. I'm just giving you an example. Which, if that was the case, it would pretty much be a bad investment. Now I'm going to give you a couple of other options that you might want to consider if you really want to do body and paint for a career. One, if you're going to invest in college, I would say, and you're really interested in things that are mechanical and stuff like that, your best bet's probably to get an engineering degree. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of demand for that. You'd probably be a lot better off, and you'd end up making a lot more money. In the body and paint business, you know, a few people make really good money. If you work in a body shop that does collision repair, and it's really just kind of a donkey type of a business where you're just constantly just hustling and that sort of thing, you know, you can make decent money. But I'll be honest with you, the flat rate hour, what they do is they pay you by the estimated hour. So let's say they give you 5 hours to do this panel. The estimated hour rate that they get $110 an hour for, a lot of the shops are only paying like $15 per flat rate hour, and they're billing out $100. So the shop's making a ton of money, and the guy working on the car is making crap. So if you're not super fast at this, you're really probably not going to make that much money. And a few people make a lot, and most of the people make very little. So the other option is you could open up your own shop eventually or whatever, just do a little one-man thing. You really need 2 or 3 people in a shop to make it work. You need one guy to kind of do the managing, and one person to actually do the work that doesn't talk to customers, and maybe a helper for them. Because if it's just you by yourself, you're either talking to customers or you're doing work, and you can't do both, and it just doesn't work out. Now, I'm not just trying to be negative. I'm just trying to be real with you about the possibilities of what might happen if you invest money in school. Here's a couple other really good options if you really want to learn it and you don't want to invest a lot of money. Number one is you can buy a project car and do it all yourself and watch a lot of YouTube videos, and that's free. I would encourage you to learn from several different YouTube channels, because you're going to find there's a ton of different ways to do something right. You know, I'm told by several people that have been trained that I don't do it the right way. But I know damn well that the stuff that I do lasts, and it works really well, and it's the way a lot of people that I know do it. And so, hey, it's just an opinion. Some of the channels I like, of course, my channel for some of the stuff. You can learn a lot from Fitzy's Metal channel. He teaches a lot of real ways to do things with limited amount of tools. Some of the painting things you can learn from guys like the Gunman or uh, the Paint Society. But you got to remember that they're spraying in spray booths, and if you're doing stuff at home, it's a completely different technique. So yeah, you could start out by just doing your own project car and learning from YouTube videos, and probably learn a lot of stuff and figure out whether your body has what it needs to be able to do the work. Because like I said, if you don't have the proper hand-to-eye coordination, you're probably not going to be able to do this stuff. Now, how I learned, it was in high school. That's out of the picture now. I learned some in high school. I went to college and learned stuff at community college. Now, the thing that is still available is many of the community colleges. Now, you can kind of check around. Different ones do, and some do, some don't. But many of the community colleges still have auto body and paint. And you can actually learn how to do auto body and paint and get a AA degree. And that's probably going to be the cheapest route. So if you were considering going to one of these trade institutes, I'm just going to kind of use that as a generic term, I would actually consider before you invest in going one of those places, which again, they're trying to sell tuition. They're trying to sell you that you're going to make all this money in this trade. I mean, chances are more than likely you're not going to be that person. But if you really wanted to invest in that and you really wanted to do something, the cheapest way to do that, and you'll learn some stuff that you'll carry with you for the rest of your life, is to go through a community college and get an associate's degree in auto body and paint. Now, I learned enough in high school that when I went to college and I took the classes, I sat down in the class. I remember coming in late for school, and came into the class. I sat down. They got a test that day. I got within the 95th percentile on a test, and the auto body teacher just says, listen, you obviously know some stuff. Could you just help out and do like a TA kind of thing in this class? So I did that, and actually not long after, I was already had a job and I was working in this business. At the age of 21, I'd already worked at a couple of different shops, and I'd actually had become awarded the position of painter, and I actually turned it down. Listen, nobody becomes painter at 21. I was a painter's helper, and I was very good at it, and I would travel around doing different locations, and they found out that I knew how to paint because I'd been painting several years prior to that, actually at a custom shop, and so I already had experience painting. But I realized that the stuff that I'm telling you in this video, that it is a very, very difficult business to make money in. You know, I know several guys who have shops. There's several guys on YouTube that have shops, and they really don't make much money in this business. The only people who really make money in this are big collision repair shop owners, okay? If you own one of those shops and you got all the right stuff set up, you can make a ton of money in auto body and repair. But if you're gonna do the trade, you're probably gonna make a living and you're gonna wear your body out, and by the time you're in your 50s, you're probably not going to be able to work much, and you'll start to lose your ability to make money. So for whatever reason, you've got to really hustle when you're young, and you've got to save all the money that you make and not buy boats and cars and whatever, jet skis and all that garbage. You've got to save the money if you're going to do it. So I do this stuff now for a hobby. It's absolutely not for income. But I transferred some of my trades into doing sign related painting, and the stuff I learned when I was younger. But I learned so much diversity in this type of thing that it's not just body and paint. I learned how to do lettering. So yeah, I learned how to do this stuff. Wasn't ever very good at it, but this trade is dead. There's no chance if you ever learn how to do this type of stuff, you're just not going to make any money either. For what somebody's willing to pay to have this stuff done, you can go and make it out of vinyl and slam it up in half the amount of time and make a lot more profit. So again, this hand painted letter stuff, yeah, it's cool, yeah, it looks neat, but it is dead. But fortunately, I was able to take some of that trade that I learned and turned it into sign related painting, which is pretty profitable. So yeah, I don't do hand brush lettering. I never really was a hand brush lettering guy. I just worked in a shop that they did it, and learned some of the stuff. Never really got very good at it. So the metalwork and fabrication portion, is there big money in that? You can make a living doing that. There's several guys I know that do really well, but they're also really, really good at it. And if you're one of those particular people that becomes really, really good at metalwork and fabrication, you can actually do that and restore old cars and make a decent living. I'm not going to say you're going to get rich, that's for sure. But again, if you've learned that in a trade school or something like that, you spent a bunch of money and you're going to have student loans, you're going to have to pay back. Again, I would weigh that out. You're probably going to make an average living and you're going to have a student loan, so it's going to be like a below average living. Again, the smarter thing to do with the same investment would be go to school and become an engineer and get your degree and your certificates for that. A safer bet, if you were to get into it, would be to transfer your skills into doing architectural painting. It's not quite as fun as making stuff look beautiful and shiny, but I can tell you that trade, there is a lot of money to be made in that. So if you invested several years into a community college and then you learned some things and then you maybe got some more skills in architectural painting, you could transfer your skills into that and turn it into pretty good money. And actually, you could actually turn it into exceedingly good money over time if you get good at it. That's sort of what I've done. I started out in painting cars, and then I realized that all the stuff you have to redo because of stupid little things like a customer comes and a piece of dirt lands right in here and he has to have you repaint that panel just because he sees it, and when he gets home he'll probably never look at that again. But it's kind of the attitude that people have on cars, and they become more and more picky over the years, and they just want them really, really mirror perfect, and it's very labor intensive to do that. The funny thing is, people think that you just walk up and you just wave the paint gun over the car and it just looks like it does, and like a brand new Mercedes. It doesn't work that way. It is the labor before you do that and the labor you do after you paint it, the color sanding, buffing, trying to make it look like that, is how you get it there. You just can't do it like those machines do in the factories and quite make it look like that. Especially when it's on a restoration of a complete car, where if you're doing a panel match and you're in a certain spray environment where you can have everything controlled, like your temperature, your overspray will be moved away from the car, all those things, and you can turn the pressure up on your spray gun nice and high and spray it on really evenly, like some of the guys like the Gunman at Paint Society, where they're in spray booths doing that stuff every day, day in, day out, and it's all the same. And it's the newer cars. It's not these old cars with lots of angles and places for paint to coagulate and run and all that other stuff. For instance, these bumper covers can be kind of tricky because there's some angular stuff on them. but the rest of the car is fairly smooth and even. Doesn't have a lot of hard angles, things like that, so it's a lot easier to spray these newer cars than the old ones. So I'm going to explain to you something about the trade school people, that some of the guys have been through the training or whatever, and some of the stuff you're going to use, some of the stuff you're not. Some of the things the guy was explaining to me, he's been to a trade school, so he knows how to do this stuff properly, and so it makes it better, right? So let's kind of explain what kind of things he was explaining. It's like when I did this corner here, and I cut everything angular at a square. He said every corner should have been drilled to keep it from cracking. Now, you know what? On an airplane, yeah, that would probably be a good idea because there's a lot of stress in the panel. On something like this, it really is unnecessary. He says when I heated it up, I used the tool that on the other side, the paint's going to be removed. What do you see on there? That's a sealer primer. That's not going to rust. In fact, from some of the old heat shrinks were here and they weren't even rusted, that the guy did 50 years ago. And when they heat shrink it with a torch like that, it doesn't have any paint on the inside, and it was like that for 50 years and didn't really rust much. So I'm telling you these things because these trade schools will teach you all this stuff. But what I'm trying to explain is, are you going to do that on a customer's car? Probably not, because you're trying to make a profit. You're not trying to make it perfect to last 100 years. That's just not the way it works in the real world. Then he explained that I should have put lead on here because the filler will absorb moisture. Again, some of these trade schools teach this stuff because some guy that did this had these problems at some point for whatever reason, probably left it outside with filler on it and no primer or sealer over it, or in a high moisture area of the country, of the world, I don't know where there's constant moisture and you left just filler on it overnight and didn't sand that down and prime it. So I've heard these theory things over the years, like filler absorbs moisture. I'll tell you, I've removed tons of filler and I rarely ever see rust behind it. Sometimes I do, because usually it was some reason like what I was explaining there. But what I'm telling you is some of these trade schools teach you this nonsense, in my opinion, because they're trying to make it valuable for you to do. But the thing is, are you going to do that on a customer's car? Can you make money doing that? I'll give you an example. In my business now, I'm a painting contractor. I paint buildings. There's 50 or 60 different ways to fix the walls that I do. Then what I do is I know all these different ways to do it. Now I have to figure out, okay, I've got this timeline. I have the installer standing there. I need to get this wall fixed as quickly as possible and make it to the acceptable range of what will pass. These are the types of decisions you end up making on a car when you're building it for a profit. Unless you're someplace where they just charge by the hour and your customer range is very slim when you're doing that. If you're going to tell a guy, hey, it's 150 or 120 or whatever it is an hour for as long as it takes to finish the project, and it's an unlimited budget, you're going to have a very narrow customer base for that. So what I'm trying to get to is, I know this way might be the best way to handle the situation on my work that I do now. I might go, okay, these patches, if I prime everything and I put this material on there and I do all this stuff, it's probably going to have the best result. But I don't do it that way because of the timeline and the amount that I'm getting paid to do it. So it's always a balancing act on everything you do. And I'm trying to explain that in another term so that you'll understand the same thing happens on cars when you're doing it for customers. Everybody wants, this. They want the best. And they have, whatever their limited amount of money is, which is usually not very much or not near what the best will buy. So all the stuff you learn in trade school ends up being pretty much not what you're going to be doing when you're doing cars in the field. So you end up wasting a bunch of money learning how to do stuff, quote unquote, right. And it may not end up being what you're doing at all. And you could say, hey, that's all half-ass or whatever. But listen, bills are bills. Rent is rent. Your expenses are your expenses, and the customers pay. If it's not going to meet those things, then you're going to have to find a middle ground somewhere. There's no way to do both and just, live on the streets or whatever. I mean, I've got friends that have tried to do that for years, and they end up living in their shop, making pennies, and, it just, is that the way you want to live, really? I'm just trying to explain to you this stuff so that before you go and invest in one of these trade schools, that you're probably going to find out that you're just going to not make a very good investment. So about what I can really summarize this with is that if you're thinking about doing that, one thing is get a project car, start working on it, see what you can do by just watching videos. If you want to invest in anything to learn more, go to a community college and try applying on your own car and see if you have the skills. If you have the skills at that point, you're probably not going to need the trade school. You're probably going to just find a job doing it and start out as like a body shop helper or a painter's helper and use that on your resume. And the best resume to me was when I was younger. I remember walking into a shop and they said, can you do this? And I said to them, yeah, I can do it. I'll tell you what, let me paint the next car that comes in here. I'll do it for free. And if you don't like it, then we'll just I'll just walk away and we'll be fine. And if you like what I do, then I'll stay here, and ended up staying there. So, if you can master your skills are what's going to sell you, not what's on your paperwork. That's kind of a farcidia to me, especially in this trade, in these types of trades where you're what you can do is what matters, not what's on paper. So, that's usually what everybody's going to look at. And if you work there a week, and if you have all the stuff on paperwork and you get the job with all the stuff on your paperwork and you can't perform, you're not going to be there long. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Hope you like this. Please like, share, and subscribe.